They all knew. The friends who stopped looking you in the eye, the colleague who stumbled over their words, hesitant, almost apologetic, the sudden quiet when you walked into a room. The shift was subtle, but it was there. You saw it, you felt it, but you told yourself a story instead. They're just busy. They're acting weird. Maybe it's not about me. I trust them. So you smiled. You kept showing up. You swallowed that knot in your chest and chose silence over suspicion, because accusing someone you care about feels like betrayal itself. But betrayal doesn't always show up like thunder. It doesn't always shout in your face or announce its arrival with broken promises. Betrayal whispers. It tiptoes behind you while looking you dead in the eye. It weaves excuses with just enough truth to keep you confused. It uses your hope against you because you want to believe the best in them, even when the worst is unfolding right in front of you. And by the time it hits, you're already bleeding, alone, confused, ashamed, not just because they lied, but because a part of you knew and didn't act. Let's be honest. This is not just a story of heartbreak. This is about survival. Because betrayal isn't only the act of being cheated, deceived, or manipulated. It's the slow erosion of your reality. It makes you question your memory, your judgment, your worth. And the worst part? Most betrayals don't start with grand betrayals. They start with subtle shifts that are easy to dismiss if you're not paying attention. That's why in this video, we're going to walk through 7 early signs of betrayal so you can spot them before they sink deep into your bones. These aren't just red flags for romantic relationships. They show up in friendships, workplaces, even families. And no, I'm not here to make you paranoid. I'm here to help you see clearly. Because clarity is strength. Clarity is power. And clarity, when paired with courage, can save you from months or even years of silent suffering. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the clearer he sees betrayal." But let's be real, most of us don't start with a calm mind when we're being hurt by someone we love. We start with confusion, fear, denial. That's why the Stoic path isn't about pretending not to feel. It's about learning to observe despite what you feel. So, if you've ever felt a shift in someone's tone, but convinced yourself you were overreacting, noticed they forgot important things about you while vividly remembering things you didn't even say, laughed at your own doubts to seem cool, only to feel hollow afterward, then stay with me, because none of that is random. It's not just in your head. And no, it's not your fault for caring, but it is your responsibility now to see clearly and protect what's left of your peace. Because here's the truth, nobody likes to say. By the time betrayal becomes obvious, it's already too late. So let's not wait until it screams. Let's learn to hear the whisper. In this video, we'll go through 7 early signs of betrayal, the ones that slip under the radar but silently cut the deepest. And the first sign might be hiding in something you've already noticed but ignored. Ready? Betrayal doesn't walk in wearing a villain's mask. It wears your friend's voice, your partner's embrace, your colleague's easy smile. It doesn't kick the door down. It knocks quietly, waits to be let in, and makes itself at home. And that's the most disorienting part, because when betrayal comes, it doesn't just hurt, it confuses you. It makes you question what's real, not just about the other person, but about yourself. You start replaying conversations, reading between texts, trying to remember if you imagined it. That hesitation in their voice, that cold shoulder, that thing they used to do but now avoid. It eats at you, slowly. Why? Because betrayal is never just about the act. It's about the disconnect between who they were and who they've become. And worse, between what you believed and what you now suspect. That's what hurts most. Not that they changed, but that they changed and didn't tell you. That they built a separate truth while still smiling in your direction. And here's where it gets dangerous. Most of us don't want to believe we're being betrayed. Why would we? We've invested time, energy, vulnerability. We've shared secrets, forgiven flaws, defended them in rooms they'll never enter. We want to protect what we've built, so we explain things away. We rationalize. We call it stress, burnout, a rough week. But here's a truth few are willing to admit. The fear of being betrayed is often smaller than the fear of being alone. And so we choose comfort over confrontation, silence over suspicion, even as things feel colder, even as our laughter starts sounding hollow. But let me ask you something. What's the real cost of not looking? Because betrayal doesn't just affect that one relationship. It bleeds into how you see others, how you trust, how you speak up or don't, how you show up for yourself. It chips away at your self-esteem. You start wondering, was I too much? Was I not enough? Did I miss something obvious that everyone else saw? And that inner questioning can turn brutal, especially when there are no clear answers. That's why recognizing betrayal early isn't about being suspicious of everyone. It's about staying anchored in yourself, so you're not swept away by someone else's deceit. Seneca wrote, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence. But how do you know when silence is strengthened, when it's self-betrayal? That's where observation comes in. Not paranoia, not constant worry, just awareness." Stoicism teaches us to divide the world into two spheres, what we control and what we don't. You can't control whether someone chooses to lie to you, but you can control how closely you pay attention and how early you choose to act when something feels off. That is your power. So let's take it back one sign at a time, because the first crack in trust is rarely loud, but it always shows up if you know where to look. And we'll begin with something that seems harmless, even polite. But it's the first thing to shift when betrayal starts crawling in, how they communicate with you. They don't stop talking. That's the thing. It's not that they go silent. It's not the dramatic cold shoulder or a slammed door. Sometimes betrayal speaks louder in words that feel emptier. They still say, "How was your day?" But they don't listen to the answer. They respond to your texts, but only with one-word replies. Or too many words, all deflecting the real question. A story here, a vague timeline there, a joke that doesn't land. And when you ask something that matters, they dodge it with charm or frustration. Suddenly, every conversation feels like walking on eggshells, except you're the only one tiptoeing. That's the first sign most people miss. Communication shifts subtly, but unmistakably. They used to lean in. Now, they keep glancing at their phone. They used to finish your sentences. Now, they forget what you told them 2 days ago. They used to share random moments of their day. Now, their stories feel curated. And the worst part? When you try to bring it up, they get defensive. They joke. They make you feel like you're overanalyzing. But deep down, you know the rhythm has changed. The music is still playing, but it's off-key. Here's the truth. People don't just stop communicating. They change how they communicate when their loyalty starts to shift. In Stoicism, Epictetus taught this vital principle. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. When betrayal begins to bloom, the person betraying you starts becoming someone else internally before they act on it externally. Their words start to detach from their intentions, and communication becomes less about connection and more about camouflage. So what do? You observe and know with judgment, but with clarity. Start with these questions. Are they still curious about your inner world? Do they still remember what you care about? Do they engage or merely respond? Are their answers clearer, always busy, tired, just a lot going on? These aren't accusations, these are signs. And here's where Stoicism arms you with precision. Instead of reacting emotionally to every shift, practice Stoic journaling, not to vent but to investigate. After a conversation that feels off, write down what was said and what wasn't said. Separate, observable facts from your interpretations. For example, they replied to my message 5 hours later. Fact. They don't care about me anymore. Interpretation. The goal is not to suppress your emotions, it's to prevent them from leading you into self-deception. Remember, a Stoic doesn't ignore pain. A Stoic studies it until it reveals the truth. And the truth is this: if someone begins to withdraw emotionally, they will first pull back linguistically, because language is intimacy. When they speak to you, lesser speak in ways that lack depth, warmth, or presence. They're telling you something, not directly, but consistently. And consistency matters more than confession. Let me be clear. Not every communication shift is a betrayal. People get tired, life gets messy, we all disconnect at times. But the Stoic response is not to panic, it's to pattern watch. Is it just a moment? Or is it a movement? Has it been days, weeks? And how do they respond when you bring it up? With curiosity or contempt? That response will tell you everything, because someone who's still in will welcome repair. Someone already pulling away will resent the mirror. So, when the words become shallow, evasive, or overly polished, pay attention, not to the noise, but to what's missing. Because the first lie of betrayal is rarely spoken. It's what they no longer say, and how quickly they cover the silence. You ask a simple question. They give a long answer. Too long. It loops, it bends, it over-explains, but somehow still doesn't make sense. And when you try to clarify, they get annoyed. You don't trust me? They ask. Eyes narrowing not because they're hurt, but because you've cornered the lie. This is the second sign. Inconsistencies in behavior. Their words say one thing. Their actions say something else. They say, "You matter," but they keep forgetting what matters to you. They say, "I'm here for you," but their presence is punctual, not personal. They say, "I was just busy," but they had time to post, time to party, time for every except you. It's not about the mistake, it's about the pattern. Because truth holds. Only lies need rehearsing. And people who are betraying you, they get tired of rehearsing. That's when cracks start to show. The dates don't match up. The tone shifts mid-sentence. They tell a story, and then weeks later, they forget the version they told. At first, you question yourself. Maybe you misheard. Maybe you're overthinking. But Stoicism reminds us, the first responsibility is to see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. Seneca warned, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today." We keep expecting things to go back to how they were. We hold on to potential, to old versions of people, hoping today is just an exception. But emotional betrayal doesn't explode. It erodes. One inconsistency at a time. And that brings us to the third sign, the most difficult to articulate and the most painful to feel. Emotional distance. They're there, but not with you. You sit next to each other, but it feels like miles. Their touch becomes lighter. Their laugh, shorter. Their gaze, wandering. They ask fewer questions. They forget follow-ups. They nod, but don't absorb. And when something amazing or terrible happens in your life, they hear it like news, not like a shared experience. There's a chilling irony in betrayal. The person who once knew you deeply becomes a stranger who remembers the old map of you, but refuses to walk it. And emotional distance doesn't just hurt, it confuses. Because they haven't said anything wrong. They haven't shouted, slammed doors, made threats. They've just faded. And you wonder if it's you. Maybe you're too needy, too sensitive, too much. But here's the Stoic lens. Emotional withdrawal is action. Silence is a signal. Detachment is a decision. And when someone begins to detach emotionally, it's often because they've already started forming a separate life, at least internally, a life where you're less central. A version of the relationship that requires less vulnerability and more distance. But here's where your strength returns. Instead of chasing validation, step back and observe. Compare how they were and how they are now. Not to punish them, but to protect yourself. Ask, are they still engaged in your emotional world? Do they notice when you're lower, only react when you speak up? Are you the first person they turn to, or the last to know? And most importantly, do you feel safe sharing your truth with them, or scared it'll be dismissed? Because connection isn't just presence, it's attention. And when that attention fades, so does the relationship long before it ends. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never value anything as profitable to yourself, which shall compel you to break your promise, to lose your self-respect, to hate a man, to suspect, to curse, to act the hypocrite." When someone's behavior no longer matches their words, when they withdraw emotionally but deny anything's wrong, they're not just breaking connection. They're forcing you into internal contradiction, to doubt yourself in order to maintain the bond. And that is how betrayal begins. Not with broken vows, but with emotional distance so slow, so subtle, you barely notice you've been left alone. They're smiling, but their eyes aren't. You're talking, but they're fidgeting, looking away, touching their face, adjusting their watch, checking their phone not once, not twice, but rhythmically, like a reflex. They used to look you in the eye. Now, they blink more. Cross their arms. Step back half an inch when you step forward. They say, nothing's wrong. But their body says, I'm not here. Welcome to the fourth sign. Body language changes. See, words lie. We all know how to say, I'm fine, when we're not. But the body, especially under stress, leaks truth. And betrayal brings stress, even to the betrayer. Because the human mind isn't wired for clean deception. It gets messy, it overcompensates, it hesitates in all the places where it once flowed naturally. And if you're paying attention, not paranoid, just present, you'll see it. You'll notice the micro-expressions, that half-second delay before they respond, that forced laugh that dies too quickly, the way they avoid physical contact that once came naturally. These are not proofs, but they are signals, and they matter especially when they don't match the story you're being told. Here's what Stoicism offers you in this moment. A calm mind that watches without clinging. Don't react, observe. Not to punish, but to protect. Ask, has their eye contact shifted? Has their tone softened too much or hardened unexpectedly? Do they flinch when asked simple questions? And then don't just look at them, look inward. Because that leads us to sign number 5, trusting your gut feeling. Now let's be clear. Stoicism is not about following your feelings. It's about testing them. Your gut is powerful, but it's only as accurate as your ability to distinguish emotion from intuition. Here's the difference. Emotion is reactive. It's based on fear, past wounds, insecurity. Intuition is grounded. It's a calm, persistent knowing that doesn't shout, it nudges. So how do you tell them apart? Ask yourself, is this fear or a pattern I've seen before? Is my discomfort coming from theme or from me reliving an old trauma? Have I ignored this gut feeling more than once and paid the price later? Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Stoic practice brings that unconscious whisper into the light. Try this exercise. At the end of any interaction that feels off, write 2 columns. On the left, what happened? Facts only. Words, gestures, behaviors. On the right, how did I feel? Don't judge, just name the feeling. Then review. Do the facts support the feeling? Do you see a repeated mismatch? That's not paranoia. That's data. And when your gut keeps circling the same conclusion despite logic, despite excuses, listen. Because betrayal often doesn't get caught in the act. It gets caught in the pattern. And patterns don't lie. So next time something feels off, don't rush to confront. Just observe. Not to accuse, but to assess. Because if you need them to admit the truth before you believe it, you may wait too long. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Your gut is part of those thoughts, but your job is not to let it drive blindly. Your job is to give it a map, and the map is this. Track their words. Watch their behavior. Listen to your inner voice, then verify it through action. Because when the body flinches and the gut whispers, it's not always a warning to fear. Sometimes it's the beginning of clarity. You want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Everyone messes up sometimes. Everyone forgets. Everyone gets distant, distracted, overwhelmed. You tell yourself that. You repeat it like a prayer because you don't want to be unfair. You don't want to be paranoid. But then it happens again. They forgot to call you back again. They left you out of the loop again. They promised to be transparent again. And just got busy again. It's not the event that matters now. It's the pattern. Welcome to the 6th sign of betrayal. Recurring behaviors that chip away at your trust quietly, repeatedly, and without apology. See, a one-time betrayal is painful. But when it becomes a loop, it's not a mistake. It's a method. At first, it's subtle. They break small agreements, then apologize with just enough charm to disarm you. They minimize the impact. You forgive. You move on. Then they do it again, only this time they're less sorry. Or they don't even acknowledge it. That's because repetition numbs your radar, and that's exactly how slow betrayal works. It doesn't attack your boundaries, it reshapes them. Over time, you find yourself tolerating things that would have shocked the older version of you. You stop calling them out. You stop expecting follow-through. You stop expecting. And that quiet resignation is where betrayal thrives. But Stoicism teaches a radical skill most people avoid. Self-inventory. The ability to observe without excuses. To track patterns, not just in others, but in yourself. To ask, what am I accepting now that I once said I never would? Epictetus said, when someone shows you who they are and you do not believe them, you have chosen illusion over wisdom. This is where Stoic practice gets concrete. If you're unsure whether a behavior is becoming a pattern, don't guess. Track it. Here's a tool. Stoic pattern journaling. Choose a time span. 1 week, 2 weeks. Write down every interaction that left you feeling confused, dismissed, or hurt. Just the facts. Example. Said they'd call at 8 p.m. Called at 11:45 p.m. No explanation. Review after the period ends. Now look for repetition. Are they consistently late with responses? Do they dodge emotional accountability every time? Do they make the same kind of promise and break it repeatedly? Don't look for big lies. Look for reliable ones. And most importantly, look at your reaction over time. Has your threshold changed? Do you find yourself rationalizing behavior you once labeled as unacceptable? Do you feel more confused than clear after speaking with them? Because here's the hard truth. Someone who betrays you doesn't always want to break you. They just want you to bend until you don't know who you are anymore. That's what recurring patterns do. They wear you down. They build a new reality, one tiny compromise at a time. And the longer you stay in that loop, the harder it becomes to see the shape of the trap. But you're not helpless. Clarity returns the moment you document reality instead of explaining it away. And that's the essence of Stoicism. Not to numb yourself to pain, but to name it clearly and respond with strength, not story. Because people can lie with words. They can twist a moment. But a pattern tells the truth they never intended to confess. So, pay attention. Because when the same hurt shows up dressed in different excuses, it's not a coincidence. It's a choice. And once you see the pattern, you no longer owe them your confusion. You owe yourself your clarity. It happens slowly. You start editing yourself just a little at first. You skip over something that bothered you because they've had a long day. You laugh off the comment that stung because maybe they didn't mean it that way. You rehearse your concerns before saying them, then decide maybe it's not worth it. Until one day, you realize you're not speaking freely anymore. That's the seventh and most dangerous sign of betrayal. They shut down your voice, not with force, not always with shouting or threats, but with quiet dismissals, with jokes at your expense, with sighs, rolled eyes, or "here we go again." They don't forbid you from expressing yourself. They just make it so uncomfortable, so exhausting, so invalidating that you stop trying. And that silence, that's the sound of betrayal succeeding. Because betrayal isn't just sleeping with someone else. It's sleeping beside you while making you feel alone in your own emotions. It's being told, you're too sensitive, when you finally work up the courage to be honest. It's the subtle training. Every time you speak up, you lose a little bit of connection until you associate honesty with punishment. That's not love. That's control. And control dressed as closeness is one of the cruelest forms of manipulation. But here's the twist. Often, they'll say they want honesty. They'll tell you to always be real. They'll ask for feedback, but only if it's flattering. Only if it doesn't disrupt the image they've curated. So over time, you shrink. Your opinions flatten. Your needs become negotiable. Your boundaries become blurry. Until you can't tell the difference between peace and submission. But Stoicism has no tolerance for this kind of erosion. Epictetus once said, "If someone tries to take your dignity by denying your truth, it is not your silence they want, it is your surrender." And a Stoic never surrenders their internal freedom, not even in the name of love. So here's the test. Do you feel safe telling them the truth? Or do you feel like you're walking into a courtroom every time you open up? Do they make room for your discomfort? Or only defend themselves? Do they hear do they handle you? Because someone who truly respects you will value your voice even when it's hard to hear. Especially when it's hard to hear. And if your voice has grown quieter, not by choice, but by conditioning, then your soul is trying to tell you something. You are being emotionally suffocated. Not because they hate you, but because they fear what your voice might reveal. That they're not meeting you. That they're not honest. That they're not who they say they are. So they shut you down one invalidation at a time. But here's what they didn't count on. That you'd wake up, that you'd recognize the difference between compromise and silence, between patience and suppression, between love and betrayal wrapped in politeness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." But let me add, if it is true and it matters to your soul, say it anyway, even if it costs you the connection, because no relationship that requires your silence to survive deserves your presence. The final sign isn't about them. It's about you. When your voice dims and you still feel like the one apologizing, that's not humility. That's erasure. And betrayal has already happened. Not in the moment they lied, but in the moment you stopped feeling like you could speak. So if your voice has been shrinking, it's time to raise it, even if it trembles, even if it's late, because the first step out of betrayal is choosing to hear yourself again. So what now? You've seen the signs, the subtle withdrawal, the empty words, the shift in tone, in touch, in time, the unease in your gut that refused to go quiet, the way your voice, little by little, disappeared. And you're probably asking, what do I do with all of this? Because knowledge without action is just torment. It makes you more aware, but not yet more free. So here's the truth Stoicism offers. You don't need revenge. You don't even need an apology. You just need your center back. And it starts here. 1. Set the boundary you once feared would cost you the relationship. That boundary might be silence. It might be space. It might be a calm but unflinching, "I see what this is now." It's not a wall, it's a gate. And you get to choose who walks through it. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Betrayal was the adversity. Now is your proving ground. 2. Stop trying to decode their lies. Start studying your truth. Return to your Stoic journaling. But this time, not just to track them, to track you. What patterns did I ignore? What did I abandon to keep the peace? When did I feel most silenced? Ask, answer, face it. You cannot heal what you refuse to name. And you cannot protect what you will not claim. Your mind is not a courtroom. It's a sanctuary. Treat it that way. 3. Rebuild trust first, with yourself. They may never admit what they did. They may rewrite the story. They may even act like you were the problem. Let them. Because the most powerful thing you can do now is not convince them. It's to stop gaslighting yourself. Your observations were real. Your instincts were valid. Your voice deserves to return. Trust doesn't begin with finding someone new. It begins the moment you say, "I will never again betray myself to keep someone else comfortable." That is Stoicism. Not emotional coldness, but emotional command. Not distance from people, but closeness with your truth. And when you're tempted to look back, remember, betrayal didn't begin when they lied. It began the moment you had to start questioning the obvious. So let the wound teach you, but don't let it define you. Yes, it broke something, but it also revealed something. Your ability to see clearly, to act wisely, to walk away not out of bitterness, but out of respect for yourself. That clarity is your freedom now. And freedom is not loud. It doesn't need to shout. It just needs to remember that you're no longer the last one to know. You're the first one to choose, to protect your peace, to guard your dignity, to speak your truth. Even if your voice shakes, even if it's the only voice in the room, especially then, and if this journey spoke to you, if it gave you clarity or language or the strength to name what was once just a feeling, subscribe, share this video, leave a comment. Not for the algorithm, but because someone out there needs these words more than you know. Not everyone sees betrayal coming. But if enough of us learn to listen to the signs, maybe fewer of us will have to learn the hard way.